I never thought this day would come, but here we are.
The chandeliers above the glass ballroom shimmered with a cold white glow, like stars that refused to blink. Rows of gold-rimmed chairs lined the aisle, flanked by symmetrical vases of lilies and calla. A harpist played something slow and delicate, background music for money. Julian Rhodes stood at the front of the aisle in his crisp rehearsal tux, adjusting his cufflinks like he was buying time. His jaw clenched every time someone said, "Perfect." If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and spread the word and tell us where you're watching from. Across the room, Celeste was laughing, a polished, intentional laugh, with her bridesmaids. Her cream silk rehearsal gown was tailored to precision, her posture regal, her hand resting on her hip, like she owned the floor beneath her stilettos. She did own it, technically. The wedding planner approached Julian with a bouquet of white roses and peonies, each petal practically glowing under the lights. "Sir," she whispered, holding it out. "For the unity table, just as discussed." Julian nodded and took it. His fingers brushed the stems and froze. Tucked between two flowers was a small folded slip of paper. Cream-colored, no ribbon, no seal, just paper. Just folded. His breath caught. He shifted slightly back to the guests and used his thumb to open it beneath the bouquet. 4 words, scrawled in hurried ink. "You promised. Remember today." The room blurred for a moment. The harpist's song thinned into static. He blinked hard, and again. The note trembled between his fingers. Behind him, Celeste's laughter stopped. "Everything okay, darling?" Her voice was clear, sharp, even through the room's echo. Julian turned slowly, swallowing. He folded the note back into the bouquet and smiled, too wide, too quickly. "Just beautiful flowers," he said. Celeste's eyes narrowed a fraction. Her lips twitched, but she didn't smile. She walked over, heels tapping in measured cadence, and slid her hand under his elbow. "I told the planner to use peonies," she said, tightening her grip. "They only bloom when they feel safe." Julian didn't answer. His mouth was dry. In his hand, the bouquet felt heavier now. Not like flowers, like a warning wrapped in silk petals. Celeste leaned closer, whispering against his ear. "Tomorrow everything changes," she said. "We leave. The past where it belongs." He didn't respond, because the past had just bloomed again, and it was watching. From the far edge of the room, near the catering table, a woman stood quietly in a gray staff apron, hair tied back, belly round beneath her uniform. Anna. Julian's gaze snapped to hers, only for a second. She didn't smile, didn't look away. Then the planner clapped, breaking the moment. "Places, please. Let's run the vows one more time." Celeste turned, radiant and precise. Julian moved beside her like a man sleepwalking through glass. He didn't see the bouquet drop a single petal on the floor behind him, and no one noticed Anna reaching slowly into her apron pocket and clutching something wrapped in old tissue. The violin swelled as the string quartet switched from classical interlude to soft hymn. Celeste walked the aisle not as a bride, but as royalty, her designer gown sculpted to her frame, her face frozen in perfect elegance. Beside her, Julian kept his expression controlled, but the weight in his hand, the bouquet, the note inside, was still pulsing like a second heartbeat. Anna stood just outside the archway that separated the service staff from the guests. Her uniform had been changed, now a pale lavender dress that clung awkwardly to her swollen belly. She looked more like an exhibit than an employee. "Come," whispered the planner beside her. Mrs. Rhodes requested the song now. Anna hesitated. The guests weren't even looking her way yet. They were too busy admiring the spectacle, the chandelier above, the rows of silk-covered seats, the champagne flutes clinking faintly in the distance. Then Celeste turned her head. One slow glance. Anna stepped forward. Each footstep echoed louder than the quartet behind her. Her hands shook as she reached for the mic. Julian froze. She hadn't sung in months. Not since that night. Not since everything had become a contract of silence. Celeste's voice rang out with perfect timing. A hymn for grace. Sung by one of our own. A voice we hold dear. She smiled, and Anna began. Her voice cracked on the first word. A hush fell. But then, soft, uncertain trembling, it steadied. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Julian's eyes locked on her. She wasn't looking at the crowd, she wasn't even looking at him. Her eyes were closed. Her left hand rested protectively over her stomach. The notes floated like ghosts across the glass ceiling. Guests smiled politely, some recording. Some whispered how raw and authentic it felt. Celeste watched it all with the satisfaction of a director whose scene was unfolding perfectly. But Julian wasn't smiling. He checked his watch. 16 p.m. Beep. The sound was faint, but Anna heard it. Her eyes opened just slightly. For a half second, she looked directly at Julian. Her voice cracked again, tears welled. Was blind, but now I see. She reached the last note. It held in the air like something sacred until it didn't. Her breath hitched. She stumbled back a step and collapsed. Gasps erupted. A woman screamed. The mic clattered to the floor, the speakers howling with feedback. Julian lurched forward, bouquet falling from his hand. Anna. But Celeste was faster, rushing to Anna's side with faux concern. Help! Call someone! She's pregnant! My God! Julian dropped to his knees beside them. She needs air, he said, shaking, brushing Anna's hair from her forehead. Where's her bag? Did anyone call? She insisted she was fine, Celeste said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I would never have let her sing if... Julian looked up at her. For the first time that day truly looked, she was already in performance mode. Hands trembling just enough. Voice pitched to the perfect level of helpless worry. Audience hooked. Julian clenched his fists. Anna stirred. Barely. She whispered something. He leaned closer. 4. 16. She breathed. Then her hand fell from his wrist. The paramedics were already rushing in. Celeste stepped back into the spotlight, directing them like staff. And as they wheeled Anna away, Julian stood frozen in the aisle, drenched in something colder than guilt, because the note was gone. And in its place was a clock ticking backward. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above the soup kitchen like an old wound that refused to close. Steam rose from trays of canned vegetables, and the line of women shuffled forward in silence. Plastic trays clutched like lifelines. Julian had never been in a place like this before. He stood awkwardly in his tailored coat, the collar upturned, trying not to look out of place, failing miserably. He was supposed to meet a donor from the board, but the man was late, and Julian had wandered toward the volunteer line, his curiosity piqued by the silence. That's when he saw her. She was wiping down the counter, a slow rhythm in her movements, methodical, distant. Her hands moved with care, but her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. Her uniform was faded and too thin for winter. The bump beneath it was unmistakable. Pregnant, alone, and barely visible. She looked up for only a second. Their eyes met, and something in Julian's chest shifted, subtly, like the first crack in a sheet of ice. He approached her without thinking. Do you volunteer here? She blinked, then shook her head. I live here, she said softly. Her voice was faint. No trace of accent, just weariness. Julian hesitated. You need anything? Anna tilted her head. From you? He smiled awkwardly. No, look, I run a property nearby. We need help. Reliable help. Housekeeping, mostly. She froze. No strings, he added quickly. Pays decent. Room and board. Anna stared at him like she was calculating risk against hunger. After a long pause, she nodded once. That night, she arrived with only a small canvas bag and a torn folder filled with hospital papers. Julian had her room made up near the east wing, far from the master suite. Celeste was out of town at a spa retreat. When she returned, her reaction was immediate. "Is that the girl from the shelter?" she asked over dinner, swirling wine. Julian nodded. "We needed someone. She's good." Celeste tilted her head. "She looks frightened. I like that. Quiet ones stay in line." Julian said nothing. Over the next few weeks, Anna worked without complaint. She cleaned the crystal stemware with surgical precision. She learned Celeste's schedule, her preferred soap, how to iron her designer blouses until they snapped like paper. But Julian noticed other things. Anna flinched at sudden footsteps. She kept her bedroom door locked, even during the day. She never sang, though he'd caught her humming once softly, folding sheets, and she never laughed. Not once. Celeste, meanwhile, began inventing errands. Ringing the bell longer than necessary, critiquing the way Anna carried her tray. "She forgets her place," Celeste muttered one evening. "I see the way you look at her." Julian didn't respond. But later that night, standing outside Anna's closed door, he heard her whisper something to herself, just 3 words over and over: "You promised, you promised, you promised." The hallway on the second floor stretched long and cold, with sunlight bleeding faintly through tall stained glass windows. The air smelled of waxed wood and expensive silence. Anna moved slowly, broom in hand, her other pressed gently to her lower back. Her feet ached, her head pulsed in warning. She hadn't eaten all day. She hadn't dared. The last time she touched the croissants on the staff tray, Celeste had casually mentioned caloric awareness, then dropped a silver fork on the floor for Anna to pick up. Now, she moved like a ghost between rooms, sweeping crumbs from a hallway that never saw traffic. Julian's study door was cracked open. She could hear him on the phone, voice low, urgent. She didn't dare pause. Then the world tilted. The broom slid from her fingers, the ceiling spun like a carousel, and everything went black. Julian looked up at the thud. Heavy. Close. He ran. Anna lay curled near the baseboard, her dress twisted, one hand limp over her belly. "Anna!" He dropped beside her, pressing fingers to her neck. Pulse, thready, shallow. He scooped her up instinctively. She barely stirred, eyes flickering open, breath raspy. She tried to speak, but no sound came. "It's okay," Julian whispered. "I've got you." He carried her down the hallway, past oil paintings and gilt frames. As he passed the marble staircase, he heard the slow click of heels. Celeste stood halfway up, hands folded over the banister. "Well," she said dryly, "isn't that dramatic?" Julian didn't stop. She fainted. "Because you've let her get soft," Celeste called after him. "They get needy when you treat them like people." He didn't answer. He entered the unused guest suite and laid Anna on the bed. The sheets were crisp. The room smelled like unopened closets and lavender. "Oil." He brought a glass of water. A cool cloth hovered without touching. When Anna stirred again, she whispered, "Sorry." "You don't have to be." Her eyes drifted shut again, and Julian sat beside her, staring at the wall like it might offer answers. That evening, Celeste poured herself a glass of wine and watched the doorbell camera footage from earlier. The fainting spell, the way Julian had held Anna, the panic in his voice. She sipped once, then twice. Then she went upstairs. She stopped at Anna's door. Old oak, slightly splintered, still unlocked, still unsafe. Celeste reached into her pocket, pulled out a brass latch and 2 screws. She installed the lock with quiet efficiency, like a woman sealing a box, from the outside. The final click echoed like a verdict. Later, at dinner, Celeste laughed too loudly at a story no one had told. Her glass clinked sharply against Julian's, spilling red across the tablecloth. "You look tense," she said sweetly. Julian didn't answer. His eyes drifted toward the staircase. That night, long after the lights went out, Anna sat on her bed, staring at the locked door. She didn't cry. She hummed, very softly, until the sound became something else, a lullaby, a warning. The rain started just after dusk, soft at first, like a warning tap on the windows, then heavier, thudding against the mansion's slate roof like impatient fingers. Most of the house had gone quiet for the night. Only a few lights glowed behind drawn velvet curtains. Anna moved through the garden path behind the east wing, taking the trash to the bins. The umbrella she'd taken from the laundry closet had snapped in the wind. Now, soaked to the bone, she pushed her damp hair from her face with one trembling hand and trudged forward. Her shoes slipped in the mud. She caught herself on the wrought iron railing near the back door. Her breath came fast, more from tension than exertion. Behind her, the door creaked open. "Take this," Julian's voice came through the rain. She turned to see him standing beneath the overhang, holding out his tailored overcoat. His dress shirt sleeves were rolled to the forearms, his tie loosened, hair slightly damp like he'd just come from pacing. Anna didn't move. He stepped closer, draping the coat gently over her shoulders. The warmth startled her. "You'll get sick," he said. She looked up at him, drenched, silent. Then softly, "You used to be kind." The words hung there, heavier than the rain. Julian's face shifted, his jaw tensed, his gaze dropped. "What happened to that man?" Anna asked, voice low but steady. "The one who said I deserved better than shelters. The one who said he'd protect me." Julian opened his mouth, then closed it, his throat bobbed. "I tried," he murmured. "I thought I could. But Celeste, she doesn't own your spine." Anna cut in, but her voice broke at the end. They stood inches apart now, thunder rumbling overhead. "I wanted to help you," Julian said finally. "I still do." She stepped back, wrapping the coat tighter around her belly. "You're 3 years late." A beat passed. Neither moved. A pair of headlights lit the far end of the gravel driveway. A sleek black car pulled in slowly, tires crunching, in rhythm with the rain. Inside, behind the glass, Celeste sat perfectly still in the driver's seat, her face unreadable. She didn't honk, didn't move, just watched. Julian saw her, Anna didn't. "I have to go," she said, turning toward the servant entrance. Julian hesitated. "Anna." But she was already inside, door clicking softly behind her. The rain thickened. Julian stood alone in the dark, coatless, hands shaking, not from cold. The black car idled for another full minute. Then it reversed quietly and disappeared, down the driveway. The morning after the storm, the sky was scrubbed clean, but the house felt heavier than ever. Julian stood at the tall front window, watching the groundskeepers rake wet leaves from the marble steps. A gardener hauled a wheelbarrow. Across the circular drive, everything looked in place, orderly, even as something inside him unraveled. He hadn't slept. He hadn't spoken to Anna. And Celeste, as always, moved through the house like nothing touched her. At precisely 8 a.m., Marta, the housekeeper, placed the morning mail beside his espresso. "1 envelope, sir. Just that." Julian nodded absently. "Thanks, Marta." He stirred his drink, then noticed it, a single manila envelope. No stamps, no markings, no return address, just his name. Handwritten, slanted, he stared at it for a long time. The paper felt strange in his hands, too light yet dense with meaning. Something about the ink scratched against his nerves. His fingers hesitated at the seal, then he tore it open. Inside, a single folded sheet. His breath caught. Paternity test. Results confidential. His heart began to pound. He unfolded the document slowly. Line after line of sterile medical language blurred before his eyes until one phrase leapt out in bold, centered, in all caps, probability of paternity. 99.999% subject A. Rhodes, Julian Marcus. Subject B. Redacted, minor, fetal sample. His chair. Scraped back from the table, the document trembled in his hands. No name, no birth date, no mother listed. But he didn't need it. He knew. His eyes darted across the room. The kitchen was empty. Celeste was upstairs. Somewhere, Anna was probably scrubbing marble or folding linens with that same distant look in her eyes. He read the results again. A strange mixture of nausea and clarity hit him like a wave. He had always suspected. That night in the shelter, the night before everything shifted, he remembered the way Anna clutched his wrist, the way her voice shook as she whispered, "You saved me, no one's ever done that before." He had kissed her just once, and for a long time after, they said nothing about it. No accusations, no promises. But now, he folded the paper carefully and slid it back inside the envelope, then tucked it into the back of the liquor cabinet, behind the untouched bottle of 20-year Glenfiddich. The irony wasn't lost on him. He hadn't had a drink in 2 years. Footsteps echoed upstairs. Celeste. Julian stood motionless. She descended in her robe, glowing from a long bath, hair pinned up, humming softly to herself. She kissed his cheek without looking at him and poured herself a green juice. "You seem quiet," she said casually. "Didn't sleep well? Too much on your mind?" She sipped. Weddings make men sentimental. Or reckless. He didn't answer. Celeste tilted her head. "Anything I should know?" Julian looked at her. Really looked. At the perfect posture, the carefully trained smile, the woman who had installed a lock on another human being's door like it was an afterthought. "No," he said. "Nothing." She smiled wider. "Good, because I want everything perfect this weekend." Then she turned and walked away, her voice floating behind her like perfume. "Anna's going to sing. I've decided." Julian closed his eyes. The envelope was still behind the bottle, still burning a hole through every wall of this house. And upstairs, Anna folded a set of monogrammed towels with shaking hands, unaware that her child now had a name on paper. And a target on its future. The invitations were printed on ivory cardstock sealed with wax and couriered by hand. No digital RSVP, no online fuss. Just the old money way, quiet, elegant, and exclusive. Julian and Celeste Rhodes cordially invite you to a private vow renewal ceremony and intimate celebration. Saturday 4 p.m. Rosemero Estate. Julian read the invitation 3 times before asking, "Why now?" Celeste, lounging in her silk robe across from him, looked up from her tea. "Because people forget, and I don't want them to." "Forget what?" "That we're perfect." She smiled without warmth. "That this marriage still sets the standard." He set the card down slowly. "You didn't discuss this with me." "Darling," she said, tilting her head. "You've been so distracted lately. I didn't want to burden you with the details." Julian's jaw tensed. "And Anna?" Celeste's smile widened. "She's performing. I want something raw, emotional, honest." Julian stood abruptly. "Don't do this." "She sings like a ghost from the past," Celeste said, her tone sweet and sharp. "Isn't that what people pay for now? Nostalgia?" "She's pregnant," he said. "She's exhausted. She fainted in the hallway last month." Celeste looked past him like he hadn't spoken. "I had her measured for a dress," she continued. "Something lavender again. Soft, vulnerable." He slammed his glass on the table. "She's not an accessory." Celeste finally looked at him, her expression shifting from amused to something colder. "Do you think I don't know?" she asked softly. "Do you think I didn't see the rain, the coat, the way she looks at you when she thinks no one notices?" Julian's breath caught. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you think the staff don't talk, or that I'm stupid?" A beat of silence. Then she laughed. "God, men are predictable," she said, rising. "You play hero once and think you're noble. But you're not, Jules. You're a collector. You like things that need you." He took a step back, stunned by the venom. She moved, past him, picking up her phone from the counter. "I've already arranged the lighting. The string quartet will fade as she walks in. Spotlight just on her. A single mic, a hush over the crowd. I want people to ache watching her." Julian couldn't speak. And you'll stand beside me, she added, turning to him, smiling, like a good husband. No, he whispered. She turned her head. What? I said no, he repeated, louder now. You can't use her like this. Celeste studied him, then calmly dialed a number on her phone. Lydia? Yes. Move Anna's dress fitting to Thursday. I want the hemline just above the ankle, submissive but maternal. Julian's fists clenched, then released. He walked out without another word. But the moment the door shut, Celeste whispered to herself, You should have told me the truth. She looked toward the hidden camera feed on the hallway monitor. Paused. On a frame of Julian brushing Anna's hair from her face after she fainted. In the next room, Anna stood on a small stool while a tailor took her measurements. Her eyes were vacant. Her voice, when asked to hum a tune, was barely audible. But it carried just enough for a storm to rise. The rehearsal day sun had already dipped, casting the Rosemary estate in amber hues. The corridors glowed with soft light, bouncing off polished floors and glistening mirrors. From a distance, the ID house looked like perfection. Up close, it was splintering. Julian stood outside Anna's room, his reflection fractured in the beveled glass panel of the door. He hesitated before knocking. 3 slow taps. No answer. He opened it. Anna sat on the edge of the bed, wearing the lavender rehearsal dress. It fit her too tightly now. Her hands rested over her belly, fingers knotted together. She looked like a statue someone had forgotten to finish. I shouldn't be here, Julian said softly. She didn't respond. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. I got something in the mail, he began. Paternity results. Anna didn't flinch. I need to know, Anna, he continued, voice quieter now. Is the baby mine? Still nothing. He moved closer. Please. She looked up, and for the first time, her expression wasn't afraid, it was blank, like a sheet of ice before it cracks. Why do you care now? She asked. Julian's throat tightened. I didn't know what to do. Celeste. Anna stood slowly. No one made you leave me in that shelter, she said, eyes locked on his. No one made you hire me like I was a project, and no one made you watch while she turned this house into a prison. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You said you'd help me, she added, and then you vanished into your marriage. Julian looked down, ashamed. She stepped closer, belly between them like a barrier neither could move around. You don't get to ask about this baby now, she said. Not when you're still hiding from the woman who locked my door from the outside. Julian's hands curled into fists at his sides. I'm not hiding, he said through gritted teeth. I'm trying to fix it. Anna gave a bitter laugh, quiet and sharp. You can't fix what you watched happen. Behind the door, in the dim hallway, Celeste's assistant, Lydia, stood with her back pressed to the wall. A slim recording device blinked red in her hand. Her breath was shallow, ears sharp. Every word was clear. Inside, Julian sat down. I need to know the truth, he said finally. Anna turned her back to him and said nothing. The silence grew heavy between them. Outside the room, Lydia stepped away, heels silent on the carpet. She moved swiftly down the corridor and turned into Celeste's private wing. Inside Anna's room, Julian stood again. I'm sorry, he whispered. Anna didn't turn around. He left quietly, closing the door behind him. But the mirror in the hallway, the one that reflected them both as he walked away, had cracked from the inside. The west wing of the estate held a room no one entered but Celeste. Not the staff, not Julian. Not even the interior designer who once dared to ask what was behind the frosted glass door with the gold handle. It was always locked. Tonight, she entered in silence. Inside, the room glowed in soft blush light. The walls were ivory, the curtains, velvet. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the space, each one filled edge to edge with identical glass perfume bottles. square, clear, with rose gold caps. Hundreds of them, all unlabeled. It looked like a gallery of luxury and obsession. Celeste moved through it like a queen surveying her court. Her bare feet made no sound on the lacquered floor. She stopped at the third shelf from the back, second row down. Without hesitation, she reached for the 15th bottle from the left. Her fingers twisted off the cap with a practiced click. Inside was no perfume, only a key. She palmed it, turned, and walked to a mirrored vanity at the far end of the room. "I always knew it was you," she said aloud, though no one else was present. Her voice was soft, reverent, like she was speaking to a ghost. She sat at the vanity and opened a drawer, revealing a leather-bound journal, a flash drive, and a burner phone. "The moment she flinched when I touched the iron," she continued, brushing her hair in long strokes. "The way you followed her in the hallway. You never could look away from broken things, Julian." She uncapped one of the full perfume bottles beside her and dabbed it on her wrists. The scent was faint, almost clinical, clean like control. "I let you think I didn't notice," she said, staring at her reflection. "But you underestimated me. You always did." From the second drawer, she pulled out a small tablet and opened the security feed from the hallway outside Anna's room. She rewound until she reached tonight's recording, Lydia's hidden camera feed. She tapped play. Julian's voice filled. The quiet. "Is the baby mine?" Celeste's lips curled slightly, not in surprise, in satisfaction. She paused the feed just as Anna whispered, "You don't get to ask about this baby now." Then she spoke, low and certain. "One more day. Just one." She recapped the perfume bottle, replaced the key, and walked out of the room, without looking back. The walls felt too white, too tall. Anna stood in the small alcove behind the grand ballroom archway, dressed in lavender, her hands cradling her belly as the string quartet's notes floated past the velvet curtain. She could hear laughter, champagne flutes clinking, the thud of expensive heels against marble. She wasn't supposed to be here, not like this, not on display. But Celeste had made it clear. You have a gift. It would be selfish not to share it, and so Anna waited, surrounded by silence that didn't feel empty. It felt watched. A cue from the planner. A subtle nod. She stepped forward. The curtain pulled back. All heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, and Anna walked into the light. Her knees were already weak. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, couldn't keep anything down. The heat from the lights pressed against her skin like a second body. She blinked, tried to find something to anchor herself. Then her eyes found Julian. He was standing near the aisle, bouquet in hand, frozen mid-breath. She couldn't read his face. Guilt? Shock? Regret? None of it helped. The microphone was placed in front of her. Someone gestured gently. "Sing now." She inhaled, but the breath caught in her throat. Then she began. Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. Her voice trembled, thin as paper. She hated how the sound echoed off the chandeliered ceiling, how it made her feel smaller, not stronger. Still, she continued. Every note was an act of defiance, every breath a reminder of how long she'd stayed silent. The room blurred. She focused on Julian again. He wasn't blinking. Tears gathered, uninvited. One slipped down her cheek as she sang. That saved a wretch like me. The baby kicked. Hard. Her hand went instinctively to her belly, but she didn't stop. Couldn't. Was blind, but now I see. The final note cracked. Her knees buckled. For a second it felt like falling through water. Then everything went black. Gasps. Chairs scraped. Someone screamed. Julian's voice. Anna! She felt arms wrap around her. Pressure, movement, shouting. Celeste's voice. Too sweet, too sharp. She's said she was fine. She insisted. Oh my God. Anna opened her eyes. Just for a second. Julian's face hovered above hers, pale and frantic. His hand brushed her forehead. Stay with me, he whispered. Her lips moved. Not sound, just breath. 4, 16. The number burned her throat on the way out. But she needed to say it. To remind him. To finish what had begun. Then everything faded again. She was on a stretcher now. Lights passing above her. Celeste's voice giving instructions to paramedics, like a rehearsal director. And in the blur of it all, Anna saw it. Celeste wasn't surprised. Not even a little. Not at her collapse. Not at Julian's panic. Because this was part of it. All of it. The dress. The hymn. The spotlight. The fall. It wasn't an accident. It was the final movement of a performance. And somewhere behind the pain, Anna understood. Celeste wasn't just reacting. She had choreographed it all. The estate had gone quiet. Guests were gone. The lights dimmed. Only the staff moved in hushed tones, cleaning up the shattered aftermath of a celebration that had ended in an ambulance and scandal. Julian sat alone in his study, the door locked behind him. The only light came from the bluish glow of the desktop monitor. He clicked the mouse. The security program blinked to life. He entered the password, 3SL3ST3. The irony made him sick. He clicked open the ballroom camera feed, Saturday 4:00 p.m. The moment Anna collapsed, his hands hovered over the keyboard. Play. The video began. The screen showed her, tiny in the frame at first, stepping forward in the lavender dress. He turned the volume up, barely audible, but her trembling voice bled through. He watched her sing. Julian had already lived it, but now he watched like a detective dissecting a crime. The guests, the applause, the tear, the final note. Pause. He dragged the timeline back, frame by frame. Her knees began to falter. Advance. Then, in the left corner of the screen, movement. Julian leaned in. There, just behind the nearest column. A white-gloved hand clutching the banister. Zoom. It was Celeste. Watching. Still. Advance. As Anna started to fall, Julian focused on Celeste's face. She wasn't running, wasn't shocked. She was smiling, just for a second, just one frame. A smirk, subtle, practiced. Then she turned and walked away from the scene. Julian hit pause again. The screen froze on her mid-step, heels pointed outward, back straight, dress flawless. He sat back, breath shallow. It hadn't been humiliation. It had been punishment. The dress, the song, the spotlight. It was all part of Celeste's orchestration. A silent sentence for a crime. Anna never spoke aloud. Julian rested his forehead against his fist, eyes closed. He had known deep down. Known when Celeste chose the song. When she picked the time. When she made Anna stand under lights with a child in her belly and a secret on her lips. And he'd said nothing. He watched Anna collapse all over again. Only this time, he knew who had pulled the string. He clicked export, footage. Burned it to a flash drive. Labeled it with shaking hands. Truth. His reflection in the monitor screen stared back at him. Half-lit, hollow-eyed. He stood, slipping the flash drive into his pocket. The silence in the room throbbed. Upstairs, he could hear the faint sound of a drawer sliding shut. Footsteps on marble. Celeste was awake, and so was he now. The grand ballroom shimmered again, just as it had 2 days before. But this time, the air was different. Tighter. Sharper. Guests whispered behind manicured hands. Journalists in tailored blazers pretended to be guests. Cell phones recorded discreetly from under napkins. Rumors had spread like wildfire since Anna's collapse, fueled by hospital gossip, security leaks, and the one thing the Rhodes estate had never dealt with before: sympathy for the maid. Celeste floated through the crowd in a gold column dress, her hair sculpted like a statue, smiling, always smiling. She kissed cheeks, posed for photos. Julian hadn't emerged yet. She didn't seem concerned, until the string quartet stopped mid-note. Heads turned. Julian walked through the main archway, alone. No tie, no jacket, just a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled. The flash. Drive sat heavy in his pocket, but he wouldn't need it. Not tonight. He stepped onto the center platform and took the mic from the stand. No music. No preamble. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice even. The room hushed. Celeste tilted her head. Her smile wavered. Julian's gaze swept across the crowd. Then it landed on Anna, seated in the far corner, pale but upright, her hands folded over her belly. "She shouldn't be here," he said softly. "But she is, and so am I. So let's stop pretending this is just a party." A nervous laugh, then silence again. "I have something to say, something I should have said years ago." He turned slowly, toward Anna, toward the cameras. "I am the father." Gasps erupted like thunder. Julian didn't flinch. She didn't ask for this. She didn't ask to be here. She was forced, used, shamed. He turned back to the crowd, and I let it happen. Celeste took a single step forward. "Julian," he raised a hand, calm, firm, "no." A beat of silence. He pulled a folded envelope from his back pocket. "Inside this is the deed to Rosemero Estate. Signed. Transferred." He crossed the floor, handed it, quietly, deliberately, to Anna. Her lips parted. "What are you doing?" "Giving back what was stolen from you." Julian turned toward his wife. "I quit." Celeste blinked. "Excuse me? If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. This performance, this image, this version of us, it's over." Flashes erupted, phones lifted. Security guards exchanged nervous glances. Celeste stepped closer. "You think this redeems you?" "No," Julian said. "It ruins you." He looked past her, straight into the camera lenses now aimed like weapons. "For those recording, I suggest you check the footage from this estate's security system. Look for the exact moment Anna collapsed." He let the sentence hang. "They'll see the truth. That it wasn't an accident. It was a setup, a punishment, engineered by the woman I once believed in." Celeste's face cracked, not a break but a fracture. Her hand trembled barely. "You'll regret this," she whispered. He leaned in. "I already do." Then he stepped off the platform. No applause, no music, just silence, raw and heavy. He walked straight past the reporters, past the shocked guests, past his former life. Anna sat frozen, the deed in her lap. Her lips trembled. One hand reached for her belly, the other gripped the envelope like it might vanish. Outside, cameras flashed. Questions flew. Julian kept walking. For the first time in years, he didn't look back.